Welcome, students, to your lesson on factoring. Your learning target for today is we are going to factor quadratic expressions. We're just going to work on factoring today. So if we look at it, we have your notes, we have 5 methods, and we're going to start with method number 1, which is finding the greatest common factor, also known as the GSC. So the first thing you want to do before you can the first thing you want to do when factoring is always look for your greatest common factor. So if we look at our expression, our greatest common factor can include both numbers and variables. And if you look at our 3 terms in our expression, what they all have in common, or what they all have in them, is a 2r. So 2r is our greatest common factor. So we are going to take a 2r out of each expression. So if we take a 2r out, if we take a 2r out of the first term, we're going to be left with r squared. If we take a 2r out of the second term, we're going to be left with 3r, because we take the 6 and we divide it by 2, and we had 2 r's, we took 1 r out, so we have 3r, and minus 6, because again, we take this 12, we divide by 2, which gives me my 6. I had 1 r, but I took an r out, so all the r's are gone. Likewise, when I did this first term, I took 2 divided by 2. There could have been an unwritten 1 there, but I didn't have to write it. And that is factor. So my final answer is 2r in parentheses r squared plus 3r minus 6. I can't factor any farther than that. So let's go look at method 2 is the difference of 2 squares. You can only use this when you have a binomial, meaning you have 2 terms. So you can only use this when you have 2 terms or a binomial. So when we're doing these, you have 2 terms. You're going to split this up into A and B. So A equals x squared, which is this first part, and this is my B. So B would equal 9. I'm going to take the square root of this, so the square root of x squared would be x. Square root of 9 would be 3. Now whatever you get when you take the square root of it, you're going to write 2 terms. One's going to have a plus and one's going to have a minus. So my factor would be x minus 3 and x plus 3 would be my factored expression. Let's look at the example on the right. Again, A is my 4x squared. B is my 25. Again, notice how they don't have any variables that are the same, or they don't have any numbers that you can take out of them, so there's no greatest common factor. Likewise, when we had x squared minus 9. Again, you're always looking for your greatest common factor. So, 4x squared, we're taking the square root of that, we're taking the square root of 25. Square root of 25 is 5. Square root of 4x squared. Square root of 4 would be 2. Square root of x squared would be x. So now I write my final expression. So the first expression would be 2x minus 5. Second expression would be 2x plus 5. And there is my final factored expression. Moving on to method 3 is the trinomial factoring. And this is when a equals 1. Notice it's in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. So, again, first thing you're going to look for is a greatest common factor. Example on the left does not have a greatest common factor. So what I'm going to do is take the coefficient of the first term and multiply it by the coefficient of the last term. So 1 times 8, which would give me 8. And then I need to look at the coefficient of the middle term. So now I'm looking for 2 terms that multiply to my first term to my last term, which is 8. So they multiply to 8, and they add to the middle term, which is 6. So again, b was 6. That is my middle term. Hold on real quick as I get rid of this. So you always want to multiply to the first and last terms, add to the middle term. So again, if I think about what numbers multiply to 8, but add to 6, those numbers would be 4 and 2. So those are my, what I like to call magic numbers. So now I'm going to write my first term, I already had it, plus the 6x, the middle term, always gets split up into your two magic numbers. So again, 4x and 2x. Again, if you look at it, 4x and 2x make 6x, and then I would have my last term at the end. So again, that middle term is getting split into those. You need to have an x with them, because it's 4x and 2x. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the greatest common factor of the first two terms, and I'm going to find the greatest common factor of the last two terms. So the first two terms, what they have in common is an x. So I'm going to factor out an x from each of one of them. And if I take out an x from x squared, I have an x. And if I take out an x from 4, I have a 4. So I have x in parentheses x plus 4. If I look at the second, or the last two terms, what do they both have in common? They have a 2. So if I take out a 2, from 2x I have x. 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. So now I have x plus 4. When you do this, these two terms must match. The x plus 4 has to equal to x plus 4, or you did something wrong. So now I can write my final answer. The x and the 2, which is what I factored out, becomes one term, and the second term is what they had in common when you factored out what was in parentheses, x plus 4. And there is your factored expression. So let's look at one more example. Again, I take the first term times the last term. So 1 times negative 14, which would give me negative 14. So I need to multiply to negative 14. And I know my b is 5, so that's what I need to add to. So again, what multiplies to negative 14? What adds to 5? And if I think about it, that would be 7 and negative 2. 7 times negative 2 is negative 14. 7 minus 2 is 5 when you add them together. So those are my two magic numbers. So again, x squared, first term stays the same. The middle term gets made into our two magic numbers. So it'd be plus 7x minus 2x, and the last term stays the same as minus 14. Now I'm going to factor the first two and the last two terms. First two terms, what do they have in common? They have an x. So I'm going to take out an x. What's left of the first x squared is x plus 7. So I'd have x plus 7 left. Now look at the second two terms. What do they both have in common? They have a negative 2. So I can take out a negative 2. And if I take out a negative 2 from negative 2x, I have x. If I take out a negative 2 from negative 14, I have a plus 7. Again, my two terms must match, the x plus 7 and the x plus 7. So now I can write my final answer as what I factored out, which is x minus 2, and what was common when I factored out, which was my x plus 7. And there's my final answer, which is x minus 2 and x plus 7. Let's go on to our next example. So again, method 4, trinomial factoring, but this time a is not equal to 1. So again, just like we did in method 3, we're going to take the first term times the last term. So we're going to take 2 times negative 5, which gives me negative 10. And my middle term, once again, is important, so b is equal to 3. So I'm going to multiply to negative 10, and I'm going to add to 3. Again, first term does not change, 2x squared. First of all, and then I need to find my magic numbers. So to change my middle two terms, so what adds to 3 but multiplies to negative 10? That would be a positive 5 and a negative 2. So again, positive 5 and negative 2. 5 times negative 2 is negative 10. 5 minus 2 is 3. So I have 2x squared plus 5x minus 2x. And again, my minus 5 stays the same. Factor out first two terms. Factor out the second two terms. So what do the first two terms have in common? They have an x. If I take an x out of the first one, I'm left with 2x. Take an x out of the second term, I have a positive 5. So I'm going to make that an x. If I take out a negative 1, is what the last two terms have in common. If I take out a negative 1 from negative 2x, I have positive 2x. If I take out a negative 1 from negative 5, I would have a positive 5. So now when I write my final answer, my first term is x minus 1. And my second term is what they have in common, or what the same term that's in parentheses, which is x plus 5. So my final answer, again, is x minus 1 in parentheses, and then parentheses 2x plus 5. Method 5, mix. So again, you can factor more than once. If we look at all of these terms, first thing we can take out is the greatest common factor. And the greatest common factor would be 2. So I'm going to take out a 2. I would have m squared minus 7m minus 18 when I do that. So now, took out a greatest common factor. Now I'm basically at method 3. So I'm going to multiply my first and last terms. So 1 times negative 18, which would give me negative 18. That's what I need to multiply to. Negative 18. And negative 7 is what I need to add to. So what multiplies to negative 18 but adds to negative 7? That would be a negative 9 and a positive 2. Negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7. Negative 9 times 2 is negative 18. So those are my magic numbers. 2 stays the same. In parentheses, m squared stays the same. Negative 7n gets changed into our two magic numbers, which is minus 9m and plus 2m. Negative 18 stays the same. Keep going. 2 is going to stay the same. Now I'm going to factor out the first two. What do the first two terms have in common? They have an m. If I take out an m from m squared, I have m. If I take out an m from negative 9n, I have minus 9. And I'm going to factor out the last two terms. What do they have in common? They have a 2. If I take out a 2 from the first term, they have an m. Take out a 2 from negative 18, that would give me negative 9. Now I'm ready to write my final answer. 2 stays the same. My first term comes from here, which is m plus 2. And my second term comes from here. Remember, those two have to be the same, which is m minus 9. And there is your expression factored completely. That is all for today. Again, your assignment is factoring quadratic expressions worksheet. Hope you guys have a great day.